recorded, man.
Yeah,
I
brother,
can
like,
dig it.
stop it right on.
Hey, man, what's your name?
Good morning and welcome to the Earl Ingram Show. Man, that sounds good, man.
It's a wake-up call.
Yeah, welcome. I don't even know what to say anymore. Good morning and welcome to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. 844-967-2789. Text us at that same number. Hey, good morning to you, Calvin. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good, Earl. It's good to have you back.
Man, there's no place like home. There's no place like home.
It sounds like AI.
And then I don't even have to click my heels together. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams. And so, Sandy, the Democratic convention was just, spectacular.
Well, you know what I thought was spectacular about it was the deep bench that the speakers, all of them. When you looked at their backgrounds, I was saying to you off the air, you had Governor Westbrook, followed by Pete Buttigieg, both of them Rhodes Scholars, both of them such impressive people. And then you looked at all the rest of the speakers who came in. I mean, there were plenty of people there who could be running for president other than Kamala, and she stood out as well.
So let me do this before we get into that, because we're going to talk about that a whole lot. I want to say, Sandy, I want to talk about football, man. As much as you and I love football, and I love football so much, and I used to love it even more so. I would watch the preseason games. You have to really love football to watch.
Yeah, I like it because number one, there's a lot of effort in.
Do you watch
preseason?
You watch preseason games?
Yeah. I'm interested in how they make the roster decisions.
Oh yeah, they're really
And come next Tuesday, we'll find out who the 53 are for each of the teams.
The amazing thing is, Sandy, they only played 3 preseason games now.
Yeah.
Used to be 6.
I know. And I think now that I see this, I think 3 is plenty with the training camp in between and how they make their decisions. And I think not playing starters makes a lot of sense when you've only got 3 games to figure out who's on your roster, because you've got to test and play all those the lower roster folks, right? The ones who are on the bubble. So I think it's pretty interesting.
Well, sometimes people get angry when they don't play the starters. The Minnesota Vikings mortgage their future to get a young quarterback, star quarterback. They put him out on the first preseason game.
Yeah, and he's gone for the season.
I mean, you understand why they don't play the guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, injury is obviously an issue, and if there's a risk of injury, I suppose you want to risk it during the season when it matters rather than during exhibition. And the other thing is that because all those people on the bubble are trying so hard, they're going to probably have some late hits. They're trying to impress. They're trying to get the coach's attention. It might be that the game is a little rougher, tougher, more difficult during the exhibition, at least in terms of having surprise contact and than it might be during the season. So, I get it. And I don't think exhibition games, we've got 17 games during the season now.
Well, so let me, it's a lot to talk about with football. I want to begin, Sandy, high school football. You and I were engaged in it at some point in time, not just playing it, but coaching it and being engaged. And I ran a youth football league for 20 years.
Yeah, I played in it, and we didn't wear leather helmets. I just want you to know, I was post-leather helmet vintage.
Well, so I didn't have, the helmets that we had. My first helmet had a plexiglass face mask.
Fancy.
What's that? It was fancy during your time to play. Remember the plexiglass?
Yeah. My first helmet had a single bar face mask.
Bart Starr.
Yeah, but and that's what we had basically the whole time. So
It didn't matter what position, huh?
no, I played center.
You were a center with a.
I weighed quite a bit more, and the and you'd get smashed in the face. It was perfect. Actually, the face mask essentially did nothing but keep you from breaking your nose when you fell flat on the ground.
Hey, Calvin, can you imagine a guy playing center with the one bar face mask?
Yeah, that would be brutal.
And back then it was a day of the forearm shiver. Let me just tell you,
man.
yeah, it was. We don't need to talk about old times, but old times were painful.
Hey, Sandy.
Yeah.
The guy could stand over the center. He
Exactly.
could line up in front of the center.
On the long snap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God. I did that. I
Center's
know.
got his head down.
Mm-hmm.
And that was legal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a different
Actually,
game now.
I'll just a short story. I played a game against South Milwaukee, and they had this big guy playing, and he just had his way with me unbelievably. And only later did I find out it was a guy named Phil Sobocinski who went to South Milwaukee High School, Wisconsin, all Big Ten, all American, and played for the Atlanta Falcons. And it was a man playing a boy.
Well, Sandy, I guess I want to talk about the fact that you can't. Some schools, now Milwaukee Public Schools used to, when I played football, we had freshmen, we had JV, and we had high school players. And so we had, 3 different levels. Today, Milwaukee Public Schools, probably only a couple of them
Have a JV.
have a JV team.
Yeah.
And maybe a couple of them have Fresh South teams. But out of all of them, they can't get enough players for teams to even field. And so some of them have 3 different schools cobbled together. And even with 3 different schools, they may have 30 players.
Well, I mean, obviously, football.
It's in trouble.
It is in trouble because I think the head injury issue is real. When I was coaching at the high school I played at long, but I was coaching more recently. There was a lot of attention paid to it. They were part of an experiment that the Medical College of Wisconsin had ongoing, putting sensors in helmets.
Right.
And we discovered a fair number of concussions and most of the concussions occurred during practices. And so, head injury is an issue. Competing sports, back in our day, there wasn't soccer. Now there's soccer.
Right.
There's competing sports, lacrosse, all kinds of other sports for people to participate in. It's much more common for kids today to be one sport athletes. It used to be that if you were a good athlete or
You played baseball, football, and basketball.
yeah,
right.
if you were an aspiring athlete, you played a sport every season. And so, there's a bunch of reasons for it. But some schools locally do have big turnouts, but they're sort of football schools. So,
Right.
and I've got a grandson at Marquette. They have 60 kids on the freshman team. So, that's a big number.
Right.
Most of the high schools in metropolitan Milwaukee don't have 60 kids out for football total.
No, absolutely not. With 3 schools combined.
Yeah, and are combining schools in order to get enough to field a team that can play safely. Because if you have 18 kids and only 9 of them are worthy of playing, like are real like first team players, you're actually endangering the kids because they aren't capable of playing safely in the big time, under the big time.
So there are actually schools in Milwaukee Public Schools that have what you just said, 18, 19
Right,
players,
right.
which I think they got to play both ways.
Well, you and I did a radio show last year for Waukesha School, and they only had about 20 kids, 21 kids.
Yeah.
They didn't have enough to, I don't think, have 11 defenders and 11 offense, 2 platoon kind of football.
Well, one of the reasons that we're having the conversation, Sandy, is in today's The Guardian, is high school football morally tenable? Morals and football
Well, I think
kind of in the same
that
breath?
article talks about kids dying from heat
Yes.
problems as well, and there's no question. I mean, I was
because of the change in the climate,
Well,
right?
I mean, we're experiencing these massive heat domes, right? I was in Utah 2 weeks ago, and it was 102 degrees, and it was football practice season, right? 2 weeks
Right.
ago, lots of high
Oh,
schools
yeah.
had 2-a-day football. it wouldn't be safe or very safe to conduct anything like a rigorous football practice in pads in 100+ degree temperature without realizing that you're putting some kids' health in jeopardy. In our day, we were so foolish they didn't allow us to drink water during practice, and we had to take salt pills before practice to make sure we'd sweat too
Right.
much and dehydrate. It's not like they've always known what to do, and it's not clear that we still have figured out exactly how to make football as safe as it ought to be for young players.
Well, Sandy, in Las Vegas about 3 weeks ago or so, 4 weeks ago, a month ago, it was 115 degrees or better for about 25 straight days. And so, I don't know, man. It bothers me that the guys who are the coaches can't understand my job is to protect this young guy. But we've got them. They want to be Bill Belichick, right? I remember in the years that I was running my league, I would tell the guys, man, I'm not looking for Bill Belichick, right?
Yeah, or Vince Lombardi.
Yeah, Vince Lombardi. These are children, right? But, even on that pro level, which, they've got all the best of everything, dehydration on a football field, they kind of go hand in hand, right?
Absolutely. No, I mean, football's a magical sport, I think, in many ways, and it does so much for character building and team building and what have you. But it is a sport that's fraught with risk, and we need to have, particularly the coaches that are coaching young people.
Right.
We need to have them help those kids protect them from themselves, because part of football is demonstrating your courage, right?
Right.
I'm okay, coach. I can go back in.
Right.
And so, you've got to save people from themselves. And that's been particularly the case with head injuries, because head injuries are very unapparent injuries. They're not even that apparent to the person who gets them. You get your bell rung, but when the dizziness passes, you think you're okay.
All right. 844-967-2789 is the number. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you.
I'll tell you what's going on. Right on. Right on. Right on.
Sandy, I can't wait to hear what. So, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Text us at that same number. Sandy Williams, Where's your head at today?
What the hell am I thinking? Huh? So that's the music from Slumdog Millionaire, which was a movie about India.
Yeah, I remember Slumdog.
Yeah, and that's sort of the lead song from it. And I picked some music today. At least the first 4 songs are a blend of what Kamala Harris is a blend of.
Okay.
We've got a couple of songs from India and a couple of songs from Jamaica, and that's who she is.
Well, Sandy, you said earlier, and for those of you who are just joining us, we were talking about football, where it's gone. I got a couple more things to talk about with it, and then we'll move on. But Sandy, you said, contrary to popular belief, you didn't play. When you played it, you had face masks.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a guy right now who played when there wasn't any helmets. Al Holmes.
There you go.
Good morning to you, Al. That's what happened to you, huh? You played football without a helmet.
Yeah,
Tackle.
Right. No, we played with plastic helmets.
Yeah.
Like Sandy did.
Yep.
But we had 2-bar face masks.
2-bar. We did graduate to 2-bar. And by the time
They're the white face masks, right? They were big. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
No, ours were metal with plastic coating.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
there was plenty of room
I
to
played
get an arm
football
through.
till I was-
There was plenty of room to get your arm through to your nose with that face mask. I can.
You mean a forearm?
Forearm. Yeah, I can vouch for that.
I played tackle football till I was 54 years old.
I said that's what happened to you, man.
54. 54.
It was
When you're
about-
54,
it was
when
about
you're 54, they come out and put the pieces back together again, so you can get to the
No
bench.
way. Sandy, we had coaches who were about conditioning, and you lifted weights and you ran like you were running forever. We were in the best of shape, and very few people that I played with got injured. Most of the injuries had to do with ankles and things like that, but it wasn't about, we were in the best condition.
Oh, yeah.
And most of our coaches were also track and cross country coaches. So they ran us forever. And, it was just a matter of you were trying to build your body up to a point to be able to deal with the punishment.
Al, you're
Hello?
not trying. You're not
Yeah,
trying.
no, we got you.
You're not trying to justify the kinds of heat conditions that this article, as the globe continues to heat, conditions on the practice field continue to worsen, and kids are left to die. We are left with a simple question: is the sport morally sustainable? Is what this article is talking about. The heat dome that Sandy is talking about, that's around during the time the football season starts, and whether or not that's safe or not is the question, Sandy.
Well, I mean, I think it can certainly be safe. It just requires a lot of care. And Al's right. I think people in good shape, high school kids. But the other thing about high school is there's lots of disparate sizes. So you've got the kid who's going to go on and play in college who weighs 280 pounds and is playing tackle, and you've got the kid who's never going to play again, who
170,
who loves playing, and his school only has 20 kids out for football, so he's playing tackle too.
Yeah. Al?
Son playing, yes, I have a grandson playing right now. He's starting tackle. He's 6'2", 320 pounds, and he's in the best of condition. He runs over half a mile every day before and after practice, and we do some other things with making sure he's strong and healthy. But
operative word.
When it got hot, we used to go. When it got hot, Earl, we used to go and practice in the gym, and that's way back in the 50s. We didn't practice out in the heat. They made us run in the heat, but not out there hitting each other.
We were out there in the heat. Now we were tough with the right.
Yeah, so we were in the heat as well. But Al, I guess what's at stake here and what the questions really are is the quality of the coaches today, and whether or not Al and Sandy, whether or not some of the people who are coaches, I think along the way we certainly don't have the coaches that we had in the past.
Well, I think it really depends on the place. So I've got a grandson who's playing for Marquette High School, and they've got some
that's Marquette High School.
Great coaching, and I think Wisconsin, the high school league, has put out a lot of information to coaches on safety. There's lots of protocols, lots of restrictions. There's lots of attention being paid to it. Football's as an organization is pretty aware of what's going on and is doing everything it can to make sure that it's safe and able to attract participants. But it is what it's always been, which is a tough sport, and it's a tough sport that involves contact, and contact sports obviously involve the potential for head injuries. In fact, non-contact sports do. They found out that soccer, the practice of heading, hitting the ball with your head,
right,
all the time, actually has the potential as well to produce CTE and problems. So, there is a risk associated with sports, and I think most people have decided that life is filled with risks, and you need to take some in order to realize the full value of life. And in sports, there are risks. But football is a bit riskier. You're more likely to hit your head in football than you are in swimming, for instance.
Hello?
Yeah.
No, just one last thing, and that is when I played football, all of our coaches smoked cigarettes and cigars while we were practicing and playing ball.
I know, man. I know, man.
So, Al, what state?
We'd be on the sideline, and they'd be blowing smoke in our face.
Michigan. He was in Michigan.
You were in Michigan. That's big-time football. Yeah. Our football coaches were not in good condition.
No. Mine was Ray Pozinski. He was probably 5'10", 290 or 320.
Yeah.
Squat, strong guy. But you can get away with that stuff back then. You can't get away with the kind of stuff they were doing then today.
Yep.
All right, Al, thank you very much for the call, man. Really appreciate it. 844-967-2789 is the number. We're going to get into some politics on the other side. Lot to talk about. 844-967-2789. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you. We'll be right back.
Buffalo soldier, dread like a rasta. It was a buffalo soldier.
Sandy, you got that question mark look on your face.
Well, there was I thought I had Ravi Shankar teed up next, but maybe that'll come. This is Jamaican music. Like I said, the Kamala is a mix, right? She's Jamaican and Indian, and so we've got a little of each.
Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams. So Sandy, your thoughts on the convention?
Well, like I was saying earlier, I was just very, very impressed with all of the talent, the deep bench, the things that people had to say that really were important. I thought Adam Kinzinger's appearance was super important, actually, because he was saying something that we've talked about on this show over the years, which is, look, no party has a corner on patriotism. And that was one of the main thrusts of what he had to say. He said, look, I'm a conservative. My party has abandoned me. My Republican Party has abandoned me. But let me tell you, Republicans, there's one thing that is true, which is that Democrats are just as patriotic. They love their country just as much as Republicans. And with that is something that I think is a very healing concept, which we have to get in mind, because I think the we they thing has gotten to the point where we have a tendency to think that they are not really interested in America. They are not, they are not Americans. And that's clearly something that I think is sold by the right. And I think maybe the left, it's crept into the left's thinking too. But, we're all in this together. If someone made the quote, I think John Lewis talked about how it doesn't matter what boat you came over this country on, but now we're all in the same boat. Okay. And I think that's something that helps the concept that we're all in it together, number one, and number two, we all love America. I thought that the constant recitation of the USA, where it sounds sort of jingoistic, it was another way of the Democrats, I think, saying, look, Republicans, your convention constantly goes to this point of the USA. We feel the same way, and we're going to recite that as well. And I thought that the convention itself went a long way towards reaching across to demonstrate that it's really a party that's not about we they. Okay, that this next election they're going to try and focus on we.
Sandy, I don't know how Republicans, and there's an article in I think it's the Wall Street Journal today that you and I are going to talk about, and it's basically talking about how Republicans, they haven't learned how to deal with Kamala and the mayor, the congressman. They haven't learned how yet, the Republicans, to attack them. And what is her name? Laura Ingram really said some crude things about Walz's son, who suffers some maladies, and she thought she was being, smart by and attacking this young man. So did conservative talk radio on WISN. They talked about the young man crying and how weak, and what kind of, what do you think you're going to gain, Sandy?
Well, what's interesting to me is that son, Gus, represents another way that the candidates, particularly Tim Walz, has a family that middle America and people can identify with, okay? Because there's a lot of people out there who have children who have on the spectrum with autism, or he has apparently some nonverbal problems. He's got ADHD. I mean, and you could tell. I mean,
right.
So instead of thinking that this was weakness, this is a sign of family strength. They didn't hide him from the public. They brought him and included him in this event, knowing that his behavior might not be exactly the norm. And they love, this is a family that loves their children, is caring for them. And to me, it's not only missing the boat when the Republicans do that, they're shooting their toes off, because there's people out there, lots of people out there on both sides of the aisle, who would respect Tim Walz and his wife and that family for all that they're doing and all that they've done. So, I think this is another way that I think that the Trump version of politics misses the mark, and isn't really in touch with the people. I think that the Trump version of politics was kind of easy when you could have an old guy like Joe Biden to paint an image of, that had everything to do with making sure that everyone thought he was way too old.
Well,
But that's that turns out to have been sort of the one joke comedian kind of problem. And now that they've got a candidate who doesn't have any of those apparent infirmities, they're going to have to deal with policies, or they're going to have to try and find mud. They tried the mud thing with Doug Emhoff and his prior life, prior to marriage. They're going to try these various things, but I think the one thing that this convention really did is displayed the humanity. Okay, it displayed humanity, and I think it displayed human stories that were very identifiable for a broad spectrum of people. And I think Tim Walz comes from Trump country himself, and is in many respects representative of the kind of person that can talk to a broad range of people. I thought the convention, and it wasn't because, to me, I mean, maybe it was staged in a way in terms of picking speakers, but I thought that the people who spoke had profoundly good things to say, and I thought they all had profoundly good credentials, and were people who the American public could readily identify with.
Sandy, what I garnered from the convention was that clearly these two different choices can't be any starkly different. When you heard those on the Democratic side, they were constantly talking about a new America, an opportunity for America to almost begin again, right? And your and my generation is moving on. It's time for America to get out from under all of those things in a new beginning. Is what I was sensing from everybody who spoke, right? And then on the other side of it, we want to go back. And Kamala and others kept saying, hey, we're not going back. I mean, it's clear, right? The distinction is very clear.
Well, and also, I saw J.D. Vance. He'd be asked to appear periodically on networks to sort of be the counterpoint, right? And so he'd say, well, we're against inflation. We're going to fight inflation. It's a simple thing. We're going to fight inflation. We're going to make sure that we are energy independent. Well, we are energy independent, number one. Number two, their version of fighting inflation involves a whole bunch of hyperinflationary kind of tools, right? The policies that they talk about are all inflationary. So they give lip service to these targets that they think middle America is interested and worried about. But Kamala's the platform she talked about was speaking directly to the things that we've been talking about in this show for 3 years, or maybe more, 5 years maybe, about
Right.
what Tom, Dick, and Mary are worried about, their budget, okay? And it's their budget that relates to housing costs. It's their budget that relates to uh, child daycare costs. It's their budget that relates to healthcare costs. Those are the things that are breaking their budget. Those are the things that are causing people to live paycheck to paycheck. And we have middle America now that can't realize the dream. She talked about this directly. They can't realize the dream because they're living paycheck to paycheck. And so what they're going to focus on, at least what she says she's going to focus on in policies, is doing things to try and rearrange the architecture for the middle class of America to make it so that not so many Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and more Americans can go back to the situation that we all aspire to, which is the American dream. being able to have homes, own homes, have vacations, have a family experience that is positive, and to be able to take care of their children, send them to safe schools.
So let's not kid ourselves. It is a major undertaking that they're attempting on the Democratic side of things to do. It because clearly it involves, sometimes taking on maybe major corporations more so than we've done in the past, and taking on the healthcare system even more demonstratively than they had done in the past. In order to do the things you're talking about, you've got to go after some people on the other side of things, right?
They're going to have to turn a deaf ear to the lobbyists in Washington.
Which is not easy.
Not easy in politics, because those people control a lot of the money that flows into politics that causes people to get elected. But they've already demonstrated some strength in that regard with respect to the prescription prices and what they've done already with respect to prescription prices. What they've accomplished in terms of the enabling legislation will allow them to do this with more prescriptions and more drugs. But they're talking about exactly the right things, and they're going to develop policies. Now, their policy with respect to prices of groceries is the right policy. We need to get competition back into the grocery business to make sure that the marketplace does what conservatives all want the marketplace to do, which is to use competition to regulate markets and to have markets be responsive and to operate as they should. The conservative would favor an active antitrust policy to make sure that we have competition, because the kind of regulation she's talking about is regulation designed to enable the market mechanism to work.
So let me ask you then, Sandy, so what I'm hearing, and not just from Kamala Harris, but from almost all the different speakers over those 3 days or 4 days, they were all talking about Tom, Dick, and Mary and what we're going to do to help them out. Well, on the other side of it, you hear the Republicans saying, we're fighting for Tom, Dick, and Mary. But the way they're talking about it, doesn't seem like they're going to be able to get there, because they're still promising more to the people who have it all.
Well, yeah, I mean, they still have implicitly only one trick in the bag, which is trickle down, because that's the only thing that can justify the policies they have in terms of tax reductions for those who make lots of money, so that they can have more money in their pocket, which presumably they say will then trickle down. But it turns out that when you're very wealthy and you have more money in your pocket, you put it in the stock market. The stock market's not out there creating jobs. The stock market's creating wealth for the people who own stock. That's basically the way that mechanism works. And so, someone who has $1 billion, the one thing they didn't do is spend it, because if they spend it, they wouldn't have it.
Right.
Yeah. So they're accumulating it. And that's a different game. No, I think that the problem for the Republicans is that when they get down to policy, they have trouble talking about it in a way that actually makes sense for benefiting Tom, Dick, and Mary. And what I thought about the policies being discussed by, for instance, Kamala in her speech last night, they were very centrist. There was nothing in there that, I know that Donald Trump wants to call her starting with a K, Communist Kamala or Comrade Kamala, or whatever he's working on for branding. But it's not going to work with respect to these policies, because these policies are not radical. They are not leftist. They're strictly all tied up with the market and market mechanisms and trying to make the market work better for the middle class.
All right, 844-967-2789 is the number. Hang on the phone lines, guys. We're coming right to you. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you on the Earl Ingram Show.
Fighting for survival. Buffalo soldier, dreadlock rasta. Why yo yo? Why yo yo yo? Why yo 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 yo? Why yo
Hey, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Text us at that same number. It's Friday. That means Fridays is my co-host. And Sandy, people are saying, hey, what did Sandy get into last night?
Yeah, incense. Can you smell the incense? No, that's Ravi Shankar, Indian. Yeah, I remember when the Beatles got totally taken in by Ravi Shankar. They had a number of albums that featured a lot of him, actually.
Right.
But he's an Indian performer, and like I said, Kamala is half Indian, half Jamaican, so I've got music spread out that way. I've got some coming from Minnesota too.
All right. Let's go to Cassandra from Middleton. Good morning to Cassandra. Thank you very much for the call. You say what?
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. Happy Friday to both of you.
You as well.
Sandy, thank you. Sandy, my question is addressed to you. I did listen to her speech last night, and overall, I would have to say that the Democratic Party they had a very successful convention, if you compare it to the Republicans. And one point in her message that stood out to me was rebuilding the middle class. And over the last two decades, the middle class has taken it on the chin. What concerned me, because I am an independent, is that for her opportunity economy, how will she pay for the items she's proposing? I like what she's saying. I don't agree with all of her proposal items, but how will she pay for it? Because we are a country in debt, and in order for her to accomplish her economic objectives, someone will have to pay for it. So you have to take resources from one to give to rebuild the middle class. So if you heard her say how she would accomplish that, Sandy, I would love to hear from you. And thanks. You guys have a great day.
Hey, thank you very much for the call, Cassandra.
Well, she didn't talk about it in that speech, but they have talked about it in prior speeches. They'll be moving to increase the corporate tax rate, move it back to something closer to what it was before the Trump reduction. I don't think they don't talk about moving it all the way up to what it was, but they talk about moving it up. They also talk about increasing taxes on the very rich, meaning that people who earn in excess of $400,000 a year will be potentially facing higher tax rates. So those will be some revenue sources. I suspect they'll also have to make some choices between expenditures as to how to make them. I'm not sure that the health costs necessarily will cost the federal government money by taking steps to reduce health costs, for instance, prescription drug reduction in cost. But extending the Affordable Care Act to more people might require additional subsidies. And then the child daycare, the credit or some other form of support for child daycare will cost money. Those are investments, however, and they will be replacing money that private citizens would otherwise be paying themselves for daycare. So they're going to try and, shift the burdens to some extent away from those who are striving to get into the middle class, but face those kinds of expenditure roadblocks to actually making it. So, I agree. I mean, I'm a centrist, and I'm also a fiscal reality person. And there needs to be a fiscal reality here. But like I've said before, we have to pay more attention to the revenue side than we do now, because we talk about tax reductions because it's terribly seductive from at the polls. But the reality of the tax reduction being talked about on the Republican side is that it's going to be, if you have to earn a lot of money for a tax reduction to be worth a lot to you. And so, there'll be a middle class tax reduction of some sort. And then, however, these other expenditures will need to get supported. There's plenty of money to be obtained in revenue by taxing the very rich. And it don't have to be taxed out of their very rich existence. in order to provide some of the additional support required.
Let's go to Tom from LA. Good morning to you, Tom. You say what?
Good morning, Joyful Democracy Warrior here, not Project 2025 Authoritarian Dictator, checking in. Sandy, I don't know if they've been hearing you or what. I definitely know the Republicans haven't heard you at all, because we talked months, maybe a year ago, about child care, health care, taxes, rent or mortgage, and how each of those indices cost $16,000 a year. And it sounds to me like the Democratic Party has a policy to actually take that burden off the average, everyday working American. And I couldn't be more proud. And for people that want to bring up border issues and all that, you know what? There's a bunch of fentanyl that got caught at the border, and it would have been stopped completely if Donald Trump wouldn't have killed the border deal. So, and also you guys in Wisconsin, I don't know why you're as concerned about the border. You might want to be concerned about Canada more so than, down in Mexico and that area. And Sandy, one other thing, I said this to Earl yesterday. Since 1989, Bill Clinton said, and he checked it and rechecked it again. 49 out of 50 million jobs that have been created. 49 million jobs have been created by Democrats. 1 million jobs have been created by Republicans. And also, I love the fact when Bill Clinton said, don't count the number of lies Donald Trump says. Count the number of times he says I. Very, very beautifully said.
Hey, Tom, thank you very much for the call. I think, Sandy, the number was 50 million.
51 and 50. But,
yeah.
But,
which is astounding.
Yeah. And that's the net number. And of course, there was the negative bounce that Trump had because of COVID. But, what's interesting is you can take out and adjust for all that COVID effect, and the numbers are still overwhelmingly favorable to the Democratic administrations.
Yeah, that is astounding, actually.
Yeah, and I think
speaks volumes.
One thing I think we don't have to be defensive about is the border policies. I think Kamala was very clear what her border policy is, and it's pretty strident, actually.
All right, 844-967-2789 is the number. Hang on the phone lines. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show. It's Friday. That means Fridays with Sandy Williams. All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789, 844-967-2789. Text us that same number. It's Friday. That means Friday's my co-host, Sandy Williams. And so we were talking about the convention and about Kamala Harris. You're welcome to join us at any point in the discussion, as always. Mike, thank you for hanging on, man, from Kenosha. Okay. You want to say what?
Friday morning, what a great way to end a great week. I like to celebrate life, especially in those moments when we need to just appreciate where we've been and where we are now. And what a difference a month makes.
Yeah, really, man. Really. Don't forget, a month ago, you, Sandy, and I, we were basically like many other Americans. We just thought it was over.
Yeah, my bedtime prayers were going into hours every night. But you know what? My prayers were answered, my friend. The feeling, the sense that it's almost like a different universe, a different time a month ago, and it was just yesterday, just about. But the reason why I wanted to chime in this morning is because, again, the stark differences between the conventions and the spirit and the theme, it couldn't be more separate. And I think for all prudent people, it's a pretty easy choice going forward. But what I want to remind people is what I was hoping I'd hear more of, and maybe that's planned for the next week or whatever. But certain buzzwords like trickle down, for example, are not being thrown back out there as often, in my opinion, as they should be, because quite frankly, trickle down and job creator, those memes are nonsense. They don't pencil out at any time you try to examine them, and yet we were kind of caught under that Reagan revolution, which that was at the core. So Cassandra, when you're talking about the equity of the gains made financially in the working classes, no, it's not the last 20 years that the blue collar groups have been taken on a chin. It's been since 1980. It's been 44 years in so that's almost two generations. Many people don't even know any other world other than trickle down. So what I'm proposing going forward, just like making these people abide by certified elections, I think talking about trickle down and job creations and how that was used as a cloak, as a mechanism to fool the people into really voting against our interests and supporting economic schedule or campaigns that were, in my opinion, un-American. So to end the call, I'm looking forward to next week and the week after. I'm looking forward to taking these old adages heads on, straight up, and just disarming the Republicans. And we got plenty of time to do that before November. What do you think?
Thank you very much for the call, Mike.
Well, you trickle down. I was talking about it before you called. I think that is the premise under which almost all of the Republican policies that they talk about are said to work, but it doesn't work. There has been no trickle down phenomena. The rich getting richer does not seem to pull the middle class up. It's actually pushed them down because the policies that have been adopted have and the evolution of the world economy, the two of those together, has cornered what is the middle class and put them into a totally different environment. And until we recognize that different environment and start dealing with it, like Kamala Harris's policies last night discussed, we're not going to improve the situation of the middle class. And the middle class will remain to be as an unhappy and an increasingly unhappy group under Democrats and Republicans, because it's important that we address it. And I think what's really refreshing is, number one, the fact that they're talking about addressing it. Number two, the fact that we have a whole bunch of people who are very articulate, who are capable of discussing it and helping the public understand the difference between the policies that would be enacted under either a Republican or a Democratic administration. And number three, it appears that the Democrats now have the will and the desire to overcome the lobbyists in Washington to try to accomplish the things that are necessary with respect to these elements of costs that are burdens to the middle class, that are keeping us from having the thriving middle class we need. And Kamala Harris is absolutely right that the sanctity of the American democratic experiment is entirely dependent on a thriving middle class. And without a thriving middle class, we ultimately will fail.
So let's go to the phone lines. Gene from Eau Claire first. Hey, good morning to you, Gene. How you doing? Thank you very much for the call. Your thoughts?
Good morning, guys, and outstanding job, outstanding coverage. Thank you for your hard work. I want to say that first of all. Then I want to say, that I pay very, very close attention to live situations that are going on in our government, and I've watched the House and the Senate not work for any policies or anything to improve life for the people and to improve the situation. All I have watched is going after any of the department heads, strictly going after anybody that has brought to the attention or the departments that have tried to do things like COVID, going after Fauci, going after Merrick, going after all the different people that may have bumped against Trump or brought out the awful things that he was doing during his time in office. Now, what I've seen with the Democrats is I think they realize, because they've been working through HE double toothpick to try to get things done in our country now and try to correct all those things that have happened in the past. And I think all of them are aware that they need to fight together for the people, or there isn't going to be any people. And that's the Project 2025. In addition to that, I watched a lot of the Democratic councils. I watched the senior council, who are fighting for seniors and ideas and plans. Individual councils. There wasn't enough time to watch all of them live, but they are there to fight for every single American in our country. Let's say the other side. And I've been an independent, but I'm not anymore. And my whole life, I've never joined a political party. But believe you me, I'm paying attention and supporting the people that are in the blue, because they truly know what the devil's going on and how our country has gone downward. And they are working every single day, fighting. And they need everybody's help. Vote for the people that have a D after their name. Vote for those Democrats, because you will see that they will push us ahead and they will help people and they will save our country. Because if we don't, I can't keep watching that guy lying every day, every single day. Thank you very much.
Hey, Gene, thank you. Thank you very much for the call. She's certainly energized. Let me ask you, Sandy, because none of this is going to be easy, and you can only work off of adrenaline so long, and it's a long slog between now and November, and so we're up, we're excited, some of us, and that other side is not going to lie down. They're not going to lie down. And, we've got many of them in our listening audience. many of them have been silenced over this last period, the last 30 days. But Sandy, I'll tell you, there's still some things that could, I hate to say it, but, can knock this train off the rails. And one of them is the issue with the Palestinians in Israel. They wanted to see if they could get a platform. They were denied the platform at the convention. There are people who think that was a mistake. I mean, I understand why, they didn't want to risk it, but it's all those kinds of things, Sandy, that there are people who support that and who, could, derail some things. And it's sensitive, right?
I mean, the world is complex,
right.
And there isn't going to be a candidate that will line up on policy with every policy that any individual might want to pursue, right? Every individual American is probably going to have to compromise in their mind some of what their purpose is when they decide who they're going to vote for. I think that what will happen is that, for instance, Kamala, as she's running, will have to explain and will probably feel compelled to explain how it is that she will implement the policy she's talking about. And I think that will be important to the American people. The Republicans have no capacity to have that conversation because they really are a one-joke comedian in terms of their approach to public policy. It's tax reductions.
So I want you to elaborate more about that.
And immigration. And I think that her retort on immigration is exactly the right one. I'm going to put that bill before Congress again, and I'll sign it.
844-967-2789 is the number. It's Friday. That means Friday's my co-host, Sandy Williams, and you.
Come on. You don't know the past, you don't know the future. Hey, how many people did that one get? How many nations did that one get?
Sandy, I didn't know you were a Prince fan. You slip him in every now and then.
Yeah, I like Prince. And Prince is from Minnesota.
Yeah.
So is part of the ticket that's at this last convention. So I've got some Minnesota music.
There's always some correlation with you, man. But with the music. Welcome back. It's 844-967-2789 is the number. It's Friday. It means Friday's my co-host, Sandy Williams. Let's go to Brendan. Brendan, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, a couple of things. One on the football front, the new kicking rule should be interesting. Been playing a little Madden, so dropping the ball into the drop zone will be important for the kicker. To the actual DNC, it was incredible. I thought her speech hit on all points. I don't think she missed one. I think as far as immigration, signing the bill, I think as far as supporting Israel, but at the same time stopping the mass killings in Palestine. And in that vein, I want everybody to remember when you see these video clips on TV of these guys at these protests that have their faces fully covered, they're agitators. They're nothing but agitators. They're at the rally. They're at the meetings for the people trying to protect Palestine. But then you also have them pretending to be protesters for Hamas. The butcher shop is empty. Okay, these folks are running out of red meat to serve up to their group, and you can see it. All you got to do is look and see. All the real protesters don't have their faces covered, but the guys that walk right up to the microphones and want to yell in the microphones, well, those are your agitators. But everybody enjoy the weekend. Get 3 friends registered to vote and vote blue down the ticket.
Hey, Brendan, thank you very much for the call. Sandy, let me ask you, because as we get all excited and people are excited about the possibility of Kamala and Tim Walz winning the presidential nomination, Congress and Senate critically as equally as important. All of the things that she's talking about and all those things could very easily be derailed if they lose the House and the Senate.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you know, if you have a President Harris, but you have Republican House and Congress, House of Representatives, you got nothing. Okay, you can operate by executive order and nothing else will happen, right? And on the contrary, if you have a President Trump and you have a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate, again, you've got a neutralizing factor there. But if you have a Democratic House, Senate, and presidency, which has happened, you know, it tends to happen in the first 2 years of a presidency, things get accomplished, you know, important things. The Affordable Care Act, for instance, which, you know, has its faults, but it was a profoundly important breakthrough in terms of the way Americans experience healthcare and have the opportunity to access it. We have lots of work to do in that regard. There's lots of work to be done, and so I think that work will only get accomplished if you have a president and a House and a Senate that are same party, okay, and I think it's particularly important this time that those be blue.
Well, you know, Sandy, there clearly is as great an opportunity as there's been in a long time that could happen, that the ticket for the White House will filter down.
Well, enthusiasm is a big factor. I think everyone's analysis still is that it's going to be very hard for the Democrats to hold on to the U.S. Senate because the numbers and the number of contests and the states in which those contests are occurring are such that there's a belief that the fragile majority that they hold in the Senate will be upset. It's a little less important in the Senate because of the filibuster rule. But you know, were the filibuster rule to go away, then the Senate majority becomes the bare majority becomes a much more important element. I think the House is a real possibility, and I think the Senate is a possibility as well. But it's really going to relate to this enthusiasm, and enthusiasm translates into voter turnout, and voter turnout is the important issue.
All right, let's go back to Al from Milwaukee. Al, go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. I just want to say thank you, Sandy, for exposing people to Ravi Shankar. Ravi also played jazz, and I have a couple of his albums.
Well, yeah, he was something. He came to the United States under the aegis of the Beatles, and he's kind of a genius musician, I think.
You know, Al is a music aficionado, or he professes to be anyway. So you guys have that in common.
Well, I don't profess.
I was very happy to hear that this morning.
All right, Al. Thank you very much for the call. Let me say this to the audience, and you know, as we're on the precipice, this kind of reminds me, Al, of as a young boy watching John F. Kennedy, and just the energy that was around that. Remember?
I do, and Camelot, the whole
yes.
concept of a new beginning, and I do think that that's what that convention seemed like, because there's so much, like I said, so much talent, so much, all those speakers that stood up and spoke from all around the country, Democratic politicians with fantastic credentials, fantastic capacity to be articulate and to present the arguments, and to make a discussion that people could find easy to listen to and easy to understand. And I think that that's what we need, and people are lusting for, actually. And I think the breath of fresh air was palpable.
Sandy, even when you look at some of the young Congress people that Democrats have, and let's say you're on the other side of that, and there's so many people who are on the other side of that, and they're watching that and they're wondering, wow, they have to, even if you don't support Democrats and you listen to the intellectual capacity of those people and their youth in their 40s, in their 50s, and then you look at what's on the other side, and yet this is not to point the finger and say that everybody on the other side is not bright or not visionary, because there are a lot of Republicans on the other side who are young and bright. They're not all Matt Getz and Green. There's some bright folk on the other side.
There's plenty. I think there's lots of intelligence. I just think that it's somehow embittered. The Ted Cruz style, the J.D. Vance style, is angry about something about liberals and a liberal elite that they want to thrash at, and it seems to be a knee-jerk reaction.
All right, 844-967-2789 is the numbers Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you. All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789, 844-967-2789, or you can text us at that same number. Let's go to the phone lines. And Bill, good morning to you, Bill. How you doing, man?
Good morning, Earl. As always, a great show. After the convention wound up, I think the takeaway is we are now on the offense, not defense. We're done playing defense. We're on the offense, and our offense is so strong that it will be kind of an old-fashioned, the way Barry Alvarez used to coach the Badgers in football. It will be just pushing forward. There's not going to be any long passes. Just keep pushing forward. And if you run out of ideas or you run out of concepts and you want to get a map to how to win, if you can stomach it, turn on Fox as they try and defend a guy with 24 felonies, 26 sexual assaults, 11 bankruptcies, and 2 impeachments. If you can't figure that out, heaven help you.
Well, Bill, even with that being said, it's still a close race.
It is, Earl, but the thing is, if you're a true American, it shouldn't be, because there is not a true American that wants a felon in the highest office of the land. There isn't. He's not an American. He's something else. And Donald's right. Everybody's out to get him. He's right on that, the government, the CIA, and it's called America. Thanks.
Hey, Bill, thank you very much for the call. Sandy, let me ask you, I heard during the convention was, and I wrote it down. I don't think they said it exactly, but this is what I got from it. We must listen to people. We must meet them where they are. But if they are in the wrong place, different from us, then we must not acquiesce to them, which is what we try to do here. We listen to the other side. People have a right to the other side of it. We listen to them, but isn't that kind of where it is? You listen to, and people have been trying to listen to the other side, but for heaven's sakes, if the other side keeps believing that Donald Trump is the savior and Donald Trump is the answer, you've listened to them, but you just can't support that.
Well, I think that it was I recall that discussion. It was basically discuss with them your differences, and I think that's what we need to learn how to do, is to discuss our differences. I think that he only is a brand that is appealing to people in a circumstance in which they are angry and afraid, because he stokes that, and he preys on that, he builds that. That is his brand. And I think that we can help diffuse that by the approach that's taken with respect to the conversation that surrounds this campaign. Because I don't think that's the common nature of people. I mean, there's a part of our DNA that reacts like that. It reacts like that when we're afraid, when we're angry. It reacts like that in the circumstance in which our tribal concerns become paramount above our general societal interest. And those are the 3 dog whistles that he's playing with. And I think we just all have to appeal to our better half, or the part of us that is what it is that has created a large, harmonious society that has worked for a whole bunch of time. I think that the problem Donald Trump is going to have is that, to the extent that the candidates continue to treat him as an anomaly, you were talking off the air about how Robert Kennedy might be
right
gonna endorse him. My reaction to that was, as I said off the air, how many clowns can you get in a car? I don't think it's going to help, because the people who were going to vote for Robert Kennedy, many of them weren't voting for Robert Kennedy. They were voting against either Donald Trump or Joe Biden, because they favored this third party candidate as an option. Okay. But I don't think that option has votes to carry on his back into the camp of one or the other of the people that that people were voting for him because they didn't like that other guy. Okay, so I don't see this as a big win for Trump. What I do see it is as the end of Robert F. Kennedy as a political figure, because you can't be for sale. Okay, you can't be so obviously for sale and have the respect of a following of people who were thinking that you were something you weren't. I think he was selling himself as this independent agent, this person who was different from other politicians. And what is he? I guess, but simply someone looking out for himself.
You know, Sandy, I've been, by now, Donald Trump would have responded if, to Vice President Harris's speech and those things that occurred. You would have known, he would have been everywhere. It would have been up in lights if he had something and a way to say it. So I was reading this article in today's Wall Street Journal this morning, and it's called, Sandy, Republicans Better Get on the Ball. They haven't made the case against Vice President Harris, and the clock is ticking. And it's by none other than Thomas Sowell.
Well, I think, as I said, I think the Wall Street Journal is beginning to distance itself from Donald Trump, because I think they realize that the policies he's espousing will be terrible for the economy, terrible for the financial community. This idea of a big tax reduction, this idea of big tariffs, would inflame inflationary pressures, and the idea of a huge tax cut without financing it would create massive increase in the national debt. He doesn't have anything to say that it has any sort of financial soundness about it. And he's trying to be a populist to appeal to, it's not clear who, but I really believe that the Wall Street Journal and the financial community is backing away.
So, I'll tell you, and even Fox News, kind of gets it. Let's go to CJ, man. Go ahead, CJ. You say what?
Okay.
CJ?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Earl, and Sandy. Listening to you, gentlemen, it sounds like you forgot that Kamala and Joe Biden have been in office for 3.5 years. And now all of a sudden, on day 1,300 and something, she plans on taking action. Well, the disaster is already happening, and they caused it. So,
what disaster? What disaster? What disaster is that, CJ?
Everything. How about Afghanistan?
Oh.
How about she was the last one in the room? Remember, she proudly said she was the last one in the room.
Hey, CJ, how long ago was Afghanistan? Since you want to talk about how many days, okay, so that disaster.
Well, it's interesting. I heard Donald Trump, he called into Fox and said exactly what you just said last night. It was nigh unto identical.
Yeah.
And the thing is that she was vice president, okay? She's clearly, in a way, breaking away from some of Joe Biden's policies and articulating her own policy. She's a different person. How much responsibility did Mike Pence have when he was vice president? And the only thing he was seriously asked to do was something that he was otherwise going to get hung for not doing. Vice presidents are not people who carry policy. Okay, it's presidents. But she was in the White House, and we'll have to talk about some of Joe Biden's policies. Yes. There's plenty of good things from the standpoint of her perspective and the perspective of many people that were accomplished under Joe Biden. I think one of the problems Republicans are going to have is that Donald Trump wants to run against a disaster, and he has to make people believe that there is a disaster. But the disaster is a straw man. And the United States public can look at the data, can look at the situation, and understand that there's no disaster currently extant, that crime is not going up, crime is going down. that many of the things that are being pointed at as being the problem are not a problem. So, we went through a period of inflation. Inflation is gone. The world went through a period of inflation, and the United States conquered that inflation faster than the rest of the world. Uh, we Donald Trump wants to talk about how if he was in power, we would be running the world energy. We would be dominant in the world with respect to energy. I don't understand how anyone can say that. The United States ranks about ninth in terms of its oil reserves, okay? We are not the country that can dominate the oil industry. However, we are as close to energy independent right now as we have ever been. We're more energy independent right now than we were when Donald Trump ended office, when he claimed we were energy independent. You have to look at the extent to which we're importing oil and the extent to which we're exporting oil. And we're actually more energy independent now than we were when Donald Trump was in office, whatever that means.
Hey, CJ, and this article is in, of all places, the Wall Street Journal. You know who Thomas Sowell is, right? It is Thomas Sowell who says Republicans better get on the ball. They haven't made the case against Harris. The clock is ticking. That's not Sandy and Earl. That's Thomas Sowell.
Well, if she gets in office, this country is doomed. Her policies just continue. They're farther.
I know, but you're basing that.
Now, wait a minute. Let's talk about that. Which policy is further left? She announced what her policy was with respect to the border. Okay, that's not a left policy. That's saying she wants to re-propose the legislation that was agreed to and sign it. Okay, and she talked stridently about being tough on the border. Which of her policies is further left? Name one. No, really, name one.
28%. Corporate.
Name
28%. It's nice, convenient. You guys forget about the 13 soldiers.
No. We're talking. Well, no, wait.
Well,
now, CJ, wait. Now, let's if we're going to have a conversation, CJ, don't revert to strident. You said that her policies were further left than Joe Biden. I just have asked you now to put your money where your mouth is. Which of her policies, name one, is further left? Because she was a centrist. If anything, she was a centrist candidate in her discussion last night. But which one of hers would you declare to be more left?
28% corporate tax.
Well, I'm not sure.
Drive businesses out.
I'm not sure that's a left-wing policy. That policy was what? Do you know what the corporate tax was under Ronald Reagan? No.
You know what, Sandy? You always deflect. It's going to drive businesses away. You deflect to something else. You claim that I always do it. You always do it to me. So 28% is going to drive businesses out.
Drive them where? Wait. It's going to drive. Wait. It's going to drive businesses to where? Businesses are going to leave the United States because we have a 28% tax. And which country are they going to go to be taxed less, other than Ireland?
Mexico. So Sandy, you deflect so well.
No, I'm not deflecting. We're discussing this,
CJ, we gave you a chance. You echoed the same talking points. We gave you a chance to defend it, and clearly you couldn't. Thank you very much for the call. 844-967-2789 is the number. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show.
may be an ambassador to England or France. You may like to gamble. You might like to dance. You may be the heavyweight champion of the world. You may be a socialite with a long string of pearls, but you're gonna have to serve somebody. Yes, indeed, you're gonna have to serve.
My man Sandy. All right.
Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Minnesota man.
All right. Welcome back. Towards the last few minutes of the Earl Ingram Show, as always, you can join us. Let me read this text quickly. Ha, 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 ha. You deflect. I'm dying. Please record that. Save it for the crew. New commercial. Say, that's CJ's greatest accomplishment. You deflect. Let's go to Gary from Sussex. Good morning to you, Gary. You say what?
Hey, I'm a little bit more down key, a little bit less aggressive than CJ is. I like listening to CJ, but sometimes he gets a little too hot. My comments, and I want to ask Sandy on this one, is Tim Walz talked about not sticking your stinking noses into your neighbors, but when during the pandemic he was sitting there talking about setting up a hotline and squealing on your neighbors if they're out there having people come over and play basketball or something like that. So to me, it seems a little hypocritical. What's your opinion on that, Sandy?
I have no awareness of the hotline about people playing basketball. I just don't know about that. So I can neither confirm nor deny that was going on. But I personally am strictly in favor of mind your own damn business as a general premise for how Americans could live and how we could conduct our government. I think that's the libertarian view, basically, about government. If it's the government's business, if it's the people's business, that's one thing. But if it isn't the people's business, then mind your own damn business. And I favor it. I don't know about any specifics about what he did during the pandemic in Minnesota with respect to a hotline.
With all the things and all the different things that were said, Gary, in the convention and where Republic and what Thomas Sowell just said, what are your thoughts about any of that?
Well, I watched it. I drank the Kool-Aid a little bit. I started sipping on it. My wife is she's more in the middle. I'm very extremely right wing. My wife is right wing, but she drank a little more Kool-Aid than I did, but we all did. And I'm excited. I think that the race is going to be very, very tight. When it's going to go down to the last debate, which there should be more than one debate, but
all right,
it's going to be determined on that point. So,
hey, Gary, thank you very much for the call. Let's go to John from Milwaukee. Good morning to you, John. You say what?
Hey, I'm independent, and I definitely won't vote for Trump. But man, I look at both sides, and let's go back to that other caller. He didn't have a lot of good facts about 12 of the last 16 years being in office, basically the Democrats. Let's look at just Harris, Biden, Afghanistan. Billions and billions of dollars of equipment were left there.
Hey, man, listen, man. Listen, but people, listen, how many Americans you think are sitting around saying, hey, let's go back to Afghanistan?
Well, and actually, I think there were some billions of dollars worth of equipment left there, but it wasn't 85 billion. I've been looking through the internet trying to find a factual basis for what the number was. It seems to be maybe a single digit billions. But the withdrawal from Afghanistan was negotiated by Donald Trump. And I think the American public is all in favor of getting out of Afghanistan. The technicalities of how you get out of a country when you've put so much money and time and physical assets into a country is a complex issue. I think 84 billion is the total dollars that were expended in Afghanistan in terms of aid to Afghanistan over the entire period. That isn't the value of military hardware. That's the amount of money that was expended in aid to them. So I'm just saying it's a retrospective look. And actually, the vice president isn't the commander in chief. The president is. So, but but we're now looking forward. We're talking about what our policies are going to be going forward. And that's really what we should be talking about. And if people think that they can try and stick that on Kamala Harris to try and be a reason for not going forward, it better be symptomatic of something she's saying about what her policies are going to be going forward. Because if it isn't, it's just an extraneous fact that isn't very interesting, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, how many people are sitting around at the table saying, "Oh, by the way, the number one issue is what went on in Afghanistan"? John, come on, man.
Dude, let's talk about borders. Don't gaslight me. Don't deflect. Don't lie. See what the borders are. And then, okay, laugh at it because that's what you do, Earl. You're a nice guy. I've been listening to you since Belnick. But listen, that you are an entertainer. You laugh at that. It's serious stuff.
It's serious to who, man?
Well, no, look, the border czar thing. First of all, I think the Republicans called her the border czar. I think that her assignment was more specific. But in any case, whether the Democrats were late to the party or not, the Democrats participated in the bipartisan discussion that was the reaction to H.R. 2, and so and they reached a compromise solution, which was very tough. And she is now expressing a tough policy about the border. So, again, I think what we should be looking at is what people are saying they're going to do going forward. And what she said last night going forward was that she's going to put that bill before Congress and she's going to sign it. And the meat of that bill is a very tough set of policies, which were done by a series of adult conversations by people in Washington who rolled up their sleeves and came up with the bipartisan bill that's been talked about for 25 years.
Okay, let's talk inflation. I work in retail. When I started 3 years ago at my current position, soda, you may laugh at this, was 3 for $9.99. Now it's 1 for $9.99. That's terrifying.
Hey, John, I wish I had more time, man. Thank you very much for the call. Mike, you got the last of it.
If we would spend as much time working on building and constructing and going forward than we tried to break, tear down people and ruin them and find things wrong with them, we got to spend our time doing the right thing.
Mike, thank you very much for the call. Thank everybody who made the show go. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Calvin, as well. Hey, get out, enjoy the weather. Up next, Greg Bach, who's in for Jane Matner on air. See you guys on Monday.
Still gonna have to serve somebody. Yes, you're gonna have to serve somebody. Well, it may be the devil, and it may